Some charities, charity schools and organisations, and there's a few big names you could think of, have made a lot of money. They've reinvested it, but they have made a lot of profit or a lot of surplus and been very business-like, through that. We are getting more business-like. There's still some cottage industry things that we do that drive me mad, but we are, and the whole community is waking up to the fact that surplus is really, really important for the reasons that we continue to explain. I think where the not-for-profit or the sector comes in, the commercial sector, is they are really commercially focused. And, having spoken to some people who have been involved in takeovers.
It's very nice to see you, Owen. What I'd just like to do is have a bit of a natter. Tell us a bit about what you've done in the past, and we can crack on from there.
So I joined the army, first off, sort of straight in.
So you left school?
Left school and then straight in, but then did an in-the-service degree through there. And loved it, 34 years or something like that. The reality is I probably would never have left, but the army sort of makes you leave at a funny age, which is 55. And without any technical qualifications, it's quite a funny age trying to enter the market. So you either sort of retire gracefully, if you like, or you leave early, depending on where you've ended up. So I made the difficult decision to leave earlier than I liked. So I left at 48 because that was still, I felt, still employable. And I was given an opportunity, one of those sort of experiences when you're doing your CV writing and you're going on your various sort of courses of integration back into civil history, all that sort of stuff. And I just applied for Durham University. There was a job up there of Pro-Vice Chancellor for the colleges and the student experience. And I applied and frighteningly got to the sort of final interview. And then they offered me the job, which okay, it's a bit of a shock. And obviously a big decision because I was sort of potentially going to go overseas for a year with the army, but made that decision because of the future. I moved up there as Pro-Vice Chancellor, which was unbelievable because it drew on so much of what the army had taught me. Is effectively looking after the sort of residential community. Like there's 16 colleges, all headed up by brilliant professors. And then there was all the sports, the drama, and so the sort of student services and everything. So it was a big brief for 20,000 pupils. It was an incredible brief. And it was brutal. It was full on. As you can imagine, 20,000 students, and I was the link with the student union, and all that went with that was huge. Now, of course, there's a massive team that made that happen. I had 750 people working for the sort of division, if you like. So it's a massive operation. But of course, the great thing about the army is you're immersed in it. So, you do your day job, whatever that was, and whatever television, then you go and watch a play, or you go to one of the colleges for dinner, or you'd go. So it was a really amazing, immersive experience. And it was a privilege to be in around brilliant 18 to 20, whatever year olds. Of course, there's all the PhD individuals slightly older as well. And then to be around a table with, 16 world leading academics, who are specialists areas, it genuinely was a privilege because you're in the room talking about, you might be talking about some soft pastoral issues or social issues, but just listening to the experience and wisdom of these incredible people, it was just amazing. And I think coming from the army, it was very, very hierarchical for all the reasons that everyone would know. And it was quite nice to be in a room where the rank wasn't on display. It was just nice to be amongst some brilliant people and everyone spoke. It wasn't just the most senior person in the room, which sometimes can happen in the army. It doesn't. The army is very collaborative. It's hugely collaborative, but occasionally sometimes it's the most senior person in the room who dominates things. And it was quite nice just to be in that very, very collaborative environment. I absolutely loved it.
So what do you think the bits when you were in the army helped you with all of that? You went to Santos at 18, did you? Is that, were you doing short service commission, or were you?
No, I think in those days you always short service, but then you get your benefits on the way through, yeah.
And what made you want to go into the army?
I had a job at about 3 years old, for those kids running around.
Family. You didn't have
no running around with a plastic helmet on and a stick. I was always going to join. There was never any doubt about that. Where and when because I grew up in Australia, so there was a debate about whether I was going to join the Australian Army or the British Army, and of course that time the Australian Army, in the nicest possible way, wasn't doing anything. And the British Army had just been to war with the Falklands and Northern Ireland. So I wanted, of course, as a centre-year-old person, want to go to war because that's what you do. So, the British Army was clearly more engaged.
So why did you grow up in Australia?
My parents were into as £10 poms, so they went out as teachers. So they went out under that, and so I left UK when I was about 3 or 4.
So you were basically in Australia.
Yeah, up till I came just joined the army. Exactly. Yeah.
So was all your schooling in Australia?
Yeah, really.
God, that's quite a brave move to suddenly go, I'm going to join, because so effectively you were Australian
Yeah.
through and through.
All my friends were there, all my family were there, everything. But I was quite focused because I wanted to be busy and active in the army. And
So was there anyone over here any family that?
our family, obviously, older family, can be said, uncles and aunts and bits and pieces were here, grandparents, but I didn't know them. So it was fantastic. And I think I arrived. What did I have to do? I did a like an O-type or something first. One of the things. And of course, there you are, day one on the platform in Lichfield Station or something like that. Okay, like a meerkat. Let's carry on.
That's amazing, actually, because that's quite a serious decision at that age, isn't it?
But it didn't feel serious.
No,
Just going out and you know what people are like when you've got a.
So how did you actually manage to join the British Army? I mean, was it?
It's flown over on a holiday. So my parents would come back on a catch up with the relatives type.
What do they think about it?
They've loved it. Yeah, they're thrilled. So I went into, I can't remember if it was Reading or somewhere. I went into the sort of local careers office and said, "What a joint!" It was the old days. You sign in, mate.
So to do that? Did you join as a soldier then, and then
You had that's the O-type thing. So I had to join as a soldier.
Okay.
For this course, 3-week course or whatever, as up at Lichfield, and then you're allowed to.
allowed to reply to?
Exactly. Yeah. So no, it was fascinating.
And did you have an Australian accent?
Yes.
So how did that go down when you came to the British Army?
I probably got away with all sorts actually because of Australia, because they couldn't pigeonhole me. I think because I met all these people who'd been to Wellington and the Guards, and I'd never come across any of these people in my life. So it's all a bit wow, and red trousers and all that sort of stuff. I couldn't see this people in my life, and I think I probably got away with stuff because I was not.
Yes. Yeah, you said like you movie. Yeah.
So I loved it. I absolutely adored the army. Adored it. I think some of the stuff we did, and of course I joined the generation that before me. Broadly, not many people had medals. They had a Northern Ireland medal, maybe a Falklands medal, maybe a Coronation medal, something like that. I mean, people had, and in the honours and awards, so 2 or 3 medals. And of course, my era was medal earning. There were 11 medals or something like that. You did them all: Bosnia and Kosovo and Afghanistan and Cyprus and Northern Ireland and then of course it's dipped down again, but now it's picking up again. So.
Yes.
The opportunity to go on tour was unbelievable in my time. We could have gone back to Bosnia and Kosovo, back to back, with Afghanistan, back to back. I never went to Iraq. I volunteered 20 times.
Yeah.
I never went. So again, that was another opportunity.
And so when you were in the Gunners, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. So you joined them. Do you join them straight from Sanders?
Yeah. And then I was going to join the Duke of Edinburgh's Royal Regiment. But you caught, Wayne, because the infantry was very focused on in that battalion, especially a single battalion regiment. You had to go there, you had to go wherever they were. Whereas the great thing about the Gunners, which is both strength and weakness, is you had an opportunity to go wherever you wanted to go. And I wanted to go to the Paras and Commandos. That was why I wanted to go that way. So that I would do my tour, and then I could go work with the Paras and Commandos.
And they were artillery commandos, no?
Yes, artillery commanders in Paris, yeah.
And did you do that?
Yeah, I did both those courses, and then the Arctic warfare as well. That's involved all those. The Arctic warfare, so yeah, it was amazing. I loved it, absolutely.
So did you do that winter survival?
Yeah, you say is it? That is fantastic.
Is it Allied officers winter?
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was the Air Mobile Force that we were part of. So we had 13 nations all plugged into us, and I was running the main tent. That all the nations plugged in. So you had 13 regiments or batteries probably of artillery.
Amazing. So, I mean, that must have been a pretty interesting learning curve, just bringing all those different nationalities.
People talk about, what skills, I know it's a cliche that in the army to go and shout at people, but everyone who's been in the army knows that's not the truth because you work in such a multinational environment. I mean, you're working with, indigenous African persons, and you can't shout at them. It's all collaborative planning. I mean, the Ace Mobile Force of 13 nations, they don't always shout at that.
Yeah, but I think even soldiers aren't going to be shouted at, really, are they?
I mean, hot contact there.
Yeah.
For all the right reasons, maybe on the drill square. But, routinely, you're trying to do planning and execution. So you learn a lot about different cultures and different experiences and way different people work. Even with the British Army, all the different cultures and different regimental things, you just know how different things work. And that, I think, is a great skill that you learn for wherever you leave and whatever you do. And I think the other brilliant thing the Army gives you beyond people skills, as they say, is ability to coordinate. And that's, when you talk about Bursar jobs, it is a coordination role. A lot of it's coordination role. And if that's what you've done your whole career, just making sure things happen the right time and space to the right effect, that's what we do.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's the concept of bringing everyone with you is the thing that's so important. And I think the one thing I noticed about schools is that you cannot do it without that.
No.
You just will not work in a school if you think you're going to just drive something through. I mean, the academic staff are going to be all over you.
And that was, great experience for me. And not that I ever went there thinking I was ever going to be able to do that, but that soft skill, if you want to call it, and the ability to work with little groups of people or groups of people. And, with 16, as an example, 16 world leading academics, and there were some pretty extreme personalities in amongst that. And you were never going to take all 16 on with you in certain areas when you were trying to do certain things. If you were trying to centralize something, for example, like catering, which I did do with, the 16 were never going to all agree to that. So you had to bite off people individually. You had to try and form a coalition of willing. If you got 8 or 9 over the line, then you had to work on that, and it took longer than you would like it to do. But that's how you worked. And there's a lovely expression, the Gunners, which has stayed with me for life, which is, interpret, influence, and integrate. And I think those 3 I's of interpret the situation, and that's what I think bursars, need to do, is understand the context internally, externally. Influence is a really key aspect of that, and that's not telling people what you want. That's, okay, that's a good idea, but why don't we do this, or have we doing this with the options and bits and pieces? And then once those 2 things, you get on with it, integrate, operationalize. And I think they're 3 really helpful words. I think for a bursar, understand the context, work out how you can take it forward and get on with it.
Yeah, and I think that it is interesting because when you hear about some of the issues that bursars have, a lot of it is about the interpretation or the lack of interpretation. When they have problems, understanding what it is. And the hard thing is, and it's interesting listening to a lot of people sort of talk about it being quite a lonely job.
Yeah, I've never felt that at all.
No, it's interesting, isn't it? But I think it depends on the school.
Yeah, probably.
I get the feeling that some people feel like they're the only one, pushing and I think in the smaller schools, it is a little bit more like that. Whereas you've got your team.
Yeah.
Whereas,
I think every situation differently. But there's a lovely expression, isn't there? Being a bursar is a bit like being the only post in a field full of dogs. And sometimes, it's just a job. That's just what you have to do, the difficult things. You have to make difficult decisions. You have to do things that people don't want to do. And that's just what it is. And you just have to get on with it. And of course, it comes back to interpreting, influencing. Sometimes, you clearly want to take people with you on the journey and make it happen. But sometimes you just got to be quite difficult.
Well, it's very interesting.
Put the line down and say, you heard it all. I'm afraid this is what we do, as long as you've got the backup of the wider management team, of course.
And I think it's actually, one of the criticisms I have of the whole sector has been not taking the difficult decisions. I think there are a lot of decisions that get shelved, particularly people decisions, and they get pushed sideways and we'll find something for them to do, but we won't actually deal with the problem, which is maybe they're not right for the organization, or it's not working out in the right way. I certainly noticed that there are quite a lot of ex-teachers appear in roles that you're sort of slightly thinking, where do they come from? I don't think it happens so much now, but it's certainly when I first came into it, I used to find ex-teachers were running the estate and things like that, which was all a bit strange. But I think it's all about, because if you don't make those decisions, then the good people, they know who they are.
And I think there's an inherent tension in the role and the environment, which is you've got the business and institution rubbing up against each other on a minute by minute basis. And the right institutional decision, keeping all the proud things we do and the brilliant things we've done since 1850 and so on, are important. But they rub up against a business decision. And the opposite is true. If you're just wholly commercial about everything and try to turn this into a focused FTSE 100 business, they're going to work because it's got an institutional perspective. And one of the challenges with a bursar role is you are caught right in the middle of that friction plate, because so especially my background in the military, I understand how important a house identity is. I understand how important all the soft issues. I understand all the pastoral. I get it all. I understand it. But at the end of the day, we're going to make sure we survive. And I'm caught in that.
Well, then I think you tie a point of those two, but I think you're also caught in a history of not having to worry about it.
That's also true.
And I think the problem with that is that's what forces the culture.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've heard it myself. I've got a friend of mine whose daughter has a house in a school, and she's only 23, 24 or something like that. And she sort of was whinging about the fact that it was a bit damp, and I'm just sort of going, well, you're paying a third of what anyone else, so you're living in the most beautiful place. Just get on with it and be pleased with it and be happy with it. But of course, there's always this demanding, I have to have this and that, seems to have built in a culture, particularly in the academic staff.
But also, I understand that, but also, the counter is also true in that, and it's certainly when I see, and I'm sure it's elsewhere. The thing that amazes me when I go through the common room or whatever is the teachers are always talking about the pupils. They're not talking about the holidays. They're not talking about their new car. They're talking about pupils. And and it's all a rig, mentality. But the teachers I see here, they're on it, and they come to work. They do all their academic work. They do all the co-curricular work, the marking, and everything goes with it. Then they're a tutor, and they're here Saturday. Not all here on Sunday, but there's enough, going on Sundays that it's peace. So it's pretty full on. And the logic of provision of housing, for example, just enables them to get on with that job and just make sure they can do the very, very best by the pupils. The house is always contentious because some houses are better than others and some have damp and some don't. We've got our own challenges here. But it is a great enabler.
Yes, I completely get that, because if you step out and you're in the school, then if you're the type of teacher that you would expect here, they will notice and carry on doing what they would normally do, and I completely get that.
Of course, I think benefits from it from a wider community perspective, but also just that the simple logistics is they don't drive home 10 miles to get changed to come back, and so the school does benefit, the college does benefit from it. There's no doubt about it. And then you get the community aspect. And now there are positives and negatives to that, because yes, the community's brilliant and buzzing and so on. One of the challenges we've just touched on, of course, if your next door neighbour is also your boss, it can create a very close relationship. And then when you try and put a professional line in between those two, there's an inherent tension that probably doesn't exist in other places.
But that's funny enough, that's not that different to the military, actually.
There's always rank in the military.
Okay.
Because they are largely, or used to be, they're not now separated by different patches. And so the officers did tend to mix with the officers and seniors with the seniors, and so it was slightly different. But yeah, the philosophy is the same.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So going back to Durham, how long were you at Durham?
Did 3 years in the end, and the sad thing was that we were loving it, as you can imagine, but that's going to sound obvious, but Durham's a long way north, and everything we had was south. All our family, all 30 years of friends from the army, not many were Durham, and of course I was busy and engaged. But any time we wanted to do something, it was down the A1 for 6 or 7 hours. And we just, some family had health issues and bits and pieces. We just thought we're spending whatever weekends we had off going up and down the A1. We could do this for another couple, whatever years, but it's not our future.
And so, of course, your mate Baz has just done the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's his home. So exactly. He's gone up.
And probably the same reasons.
But yeah, exactly right. You've got to work out at some point, especially having moved around the army, where your central gravity is going to be, domestically, whatever. And we have an affinity with these counties. So we wanted to come south, and this opportunity, classic phone call from Parrot Lever, I think it was, saying, hello, are you interested? And we had a chat and said, yeah, let's have a conversation.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And so you came here, how many years ago now?
2019 I came, 1st of April.
Of course, you've been here 6 years.
Is it 6 years?
Wow.
And then, of course, a year later, COVID struck, so that was always a joy for that. It's, when it's hands and gloves and putting on jackets and all that sort of stuff, when you go in and you try a pair of shoes on, you try a jacket that fits, and it just fitted, I'm not saying that, I love the army, I love Durham, but it just felt good. I parked the car, I walked through the arch, went through a section, I went just something.
Yeah. It's like buying a house, isn't it?
Yeah, all of that. Just felt right. And maybe if I'd gone to 5 other schools, this change would have happened, or maybe it wouldn't, don't know. And it's got a lovely feel here, It's got its foibles and its problems, of course it has, but it just feels right.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking for anything else, because why?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's, although.
Well, while you've got the challenges, it's fine, isn't it? And it's a big enough school. I feel like I was going to say, it's the challenges is the thing, isn't it? That's what you move for. Whereas if you can get those from within where you are, it doesn't matter so much.
There's something about, and maybe as you get a bit older, but I do, in a sense, like a trifling saying, I don't mean to be trite, but I had an incredible team, which I inherited, by the way. And they're just all over it. And there's an element of do I want to move, try and find a new team, build it in, I'm sure it'd be brilliant, whatever. But, there's an element of comfort in that sort of everything goes the way that you think it is. There's stuff to be done. Of course, there's stuff to be done. But it's great the day-to-day and plus, not just the day-to-day, but the new projects and so just happen, and this comes back to this just coordination role. And what I'm really pleased about, and, it hasn't taken much because I inherited an incredible team, but don't need much direction. They sort of just know what's got to be done and what to get on with and
Pulling the string.
come to me with the solutions. Say, this is the problem we've got. We think this is the right answer, but it's political. It's largely just that political top cover. Yeah. I'll upset this person. Are you okay with that type thing? And that's fine. And, we'll just talk together.
So how did you find, that was great, coming here. What was your first feeling when you took over?
Well, I was quite excited. And it was. It's a stunning place to work. And absolutely beautiful, has great purpose, great values. And you feel the values. The team were all over it, had lots to be done in project terms across the piece. HR needed, the HR team were not great. That was one area that has needed quite a lot of focus. So there's quite a lot of work to be done there and still building on that. So, it's always COVID was really hard work. I know there's lots of people out there who had their own COVID experiences. But it was pretty brutal. It was brutal because there was no playbook. None of us had ever done this before. Everyone's trying to watch each other. The government, as were getting out. Well, this body was saying this, but this body was saying that. And of course, you had a lot of parents saying, well, Mark, I've got a friend who's a doctor and they don't think we should be doing this. And you've got other people saying, I think we should be doing this. And you're caught with these sort of phone calls and messages and so, you're being too soft or you're being too hard. And then with all the bubbles. So poor kids that we sent home, there's nothing wrong with them. It was quite stressful, and all the testing. And we airbrushed it all out of our memory facts. But if you look back, and so we had some really stressful days about what the curriculum's going to be, how we're going to do it, how we roll it out. And we were very fortunate in that Chris Stevens, who was the headmaster, was very visionary anyway. But we just made a decision that we're going to go laptop across the whole college. And we just bought 150 laptops the month before. And people were using them and so on. So we could go like that straight onto Teams and get it all running. And, we received, rightly so, lots of plaudits for that. And we were just into it straight away. But it was really, really tricky. We had some very difficult.
Well, I think when individual families had tricky decisions, but when you've got that many families involved, that's pretty difficult.
Yeah, and again, led by the headmaster of it, the communication was excellent. Trying to unpack the fog and try to work out what we could do, vision scoping and all that sort of stuff. But as ever, everyone really got involved. We had a brilliant health and safety manager who was at the heart of everything. Researched well, tracked down well, and we just did our very best. But it was, so we airbrush it out, but it was hard.
Yeah.
No, I made large meetings and conferences and there was a lot of challenges in those conversations. There was, not everyone agreed.
Well, the trouble is, it's very difficult to get everyone to agree when everyone's getting different information.
It's exactly right.
We just found in our little family, just coming over Christmas, what the hell do we do now when someone's just suddenly says, well, they've got it, so they end up in a flat in London on their own, things like that. It's
there were hard times. And of course, financially, we took a big hit, which was still, I think we recovered from. But we froze the fees. But the expenditure, we have further over species. But we bounced back on expenditure terms quite quickly. So it has taken us time to recover financially, as well with lots of other people I know from COVID. So there's still a shadow there.
So what made you make the change from Durham to here in terms of going from, say, university to school? Just the job? Or?
Yeah, I'd always. In the army, I did lots of the sort of various postings, because I did want to be a bursar because that was my thing. The Durham came out of left field and it was awesome. But in my heart, I always wanted to be in school because it's a bit of a smaller community. Durham, 20,000 students.
So you said you wanted to be a bursar. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I think the people I knew, because I was always involved in educational trade in a new way. And it felt like the right purpose. I think I've always, whilst I've never been a teacher, I've always believed in education and training. So a lot of my postings were based on that. And I thought, well, if I don't want to be a teacher, and I don't have the qualifications to be a teacher, but I want to be in that enabling environment. I've been commandant of our school. I'd worked at our school a lot of times. I've been to Pets Academy for 5 years. So I've been in and around education and training, a lot of it. So I saw the great outcomes it achieves. And so I wanted to continue to be part of education.
Right. So you came here. What would you say if someone was looking to do what you did now? What sort of advice would you give them?
I think you have to want it. You know, you need to be, it's not something you can just try. I think you really do have to be quite passionate about education and that role in it. Each school is different. So you probably need to look around and find out what you want from a school. It's that skill set. It comes back to interpret, influence, integrate. I think you've got to, in some ways, be a good generalist and be comfortable with being a generalist, because you're going to have experts all around you, and having that comfort that people know more about things than you do, and just how you can bring those together. And also, I mean, you know, we've touched on it, that, you know, working in an academic environment does have its ways. You know, it's a hugely positive, vibrant community to work in. But there is this funny rhythm of 10 weeks of complete madness, and then all the, you know, teachers understandably go on whatever holiday they have. And then a lot of work happens here. So it's a different sort of tempo. But I think it's so many things in life. If you're interested, explore it.
And if there were, say, 3 things that they should look at from about a school before they actually make that decision.
Feel would be one of them. You know, you can, you know, we know it's all like, you go into an organization, you get a feel for it. How does that feel? Ambition, you know, what's the ambition of the organization? You know, what's the focus? And then a sense of the people you meet. And that's probably conflicts with feel as such, but you get a good impression of sort of people you meet as to whether you're dealing with like-minded.
And who would you advise them to meet before they went to school?
I'd say fellow bursars, you know, to get a sense of, you know, their own experiences. And I think ISBA run a brilliant program of, you know, the Bursar Day and bits and pieces. Other people in operational roles, so the head of estates, the head of IT, the head of, you know, whatever soft FM there is, you just get a sense of what their roles are and how that works. You know, finance again, and talk to some teachers as well. Find some headmasters, find some second masters, deputy heads, and have a conversation with them about what they think a good bursar is or not. Work out whether your skill sets align with what they think they should be doing.
It's interesting, isn't it, how even though schools are very similar, they're also very different.
Yeah.
It's slightly bizarre. They all seem to run with the same structure, but they're all different in the way, because it's all about emphasis, isn't it? On
I go like we all do. I go, you know, to all the various conferences and so on, and I have made a habit of going around, you know, all our peer institutions and so on. They're always very generous for their time, and you do go around sometimes go, wow, that's incredible. There are some schools that have got amazing facilities and they just are impressive. There's no doubt about it. But then you do come back and you go, I'm sort of glad I don't work there. You know, I have you here. You always come back with top tips. You look at some stuff and go, well, it's 20 million, we're not going to be able to do that. But there are some top tips, and you go, oh, that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought about that. Really thought about that. You know, you always steal good ideas and bring them back. So, and again, we encourage our team to do the same. So Director of Estates is out meeting someone next week and getting all that exchange of information. Some things translate, some things don't.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't interesting. So where do you see the future of the independent sector?
I think it's widely commented. I mean, it has to consolidate, because I just don't think the demographics are there and the affordability is there. I mean, it is an expensive pursuit for parents. I mean, it always has been, but it's got very expensive, be it boarding or day. And so the target audience, if you like, the number of people who can afford private education is getting smaller. And of course, the demographic is getting smaller, and 2037 is a cliff edge. So now there's always the international pipeline from international overseas pupils. And so that can mitigate that to a point. But I think ultimately, and you've seen it, I think there's been 60-odd schools that have closed this year, with sadly another 60-odd or so to close going forward. The market will consolidate. And inevitably those that are strong will continue to be strong, and those who are on the edge sadly may not thrive. So there'll be less choice for people, but it will consolidate. And I think we'll see more groups, and we've just seen a huge marry up of Radley and the Prep School Trust. And of course there's all the private equity that's come pouring in.
See, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Now, when you listen to how much people make out of schools, and I say make as in surplus, because not allowed to talk about profit. People say, oh, it's not very much, we don't make very much. And yet private equity are really interested in it. Now, private equity are only interested in something they can make a lot of money out of. ultimately. So it's quite interesting that I was talking to someone and they said to me, oh, well, they can do that because they're a group.
Yeah.
They can make profit because they're a group. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And they were going, well, because, they're focused on making profit, so they can make profit. I said, but you can make profit as well. But, you don't have to be a group to make profit. You can be whatever you like to make profit, because, and it's getting this idea that actually making profit is not a bad thing.
Right.
I had to do a training course a while ago for heads. And my first thing I put up on the thing was, my first slide was profit. And there was this huge intake of breath, go around the room. And and then I changed it to surplus. And they all sort of breathed out. And I sort of, but guys, this is about, if you make the money, you reinvest this. That stuff there is your investment for next year. And I think it's interesting how it's coming, but it's quite hard to get that concept across, that it doesn't matter to make money. In fact, you have to make money because you're going to have the bad times and the good times. And we don't know if there's another COVID around the corner or whatever. So all these schools are going to need something to hold on to.
Yeah, I think, there are different models out there, as we all know. And I do believe some charity schools and organizations, and there's a few big names you could think of, have made a lot of money. They've reinvested it, but they have made a lot of profit or a lot of surplus. And been very business-like, through that. We are getting more business-like. There's still some cottage industry things that we do that drive me mad. But, we are, and the whole community is waking up to the fact that, that the surplus is really, really important for the reasons that we continue to explain. I think where the not-for-profit or the sector comes in, the commercial sector, is they are really commercially focused. And, having spoken to some people who have been involved in takeovers, and I think our staff wage, if you like, is something like 67% of our outgoings, and they drive that down to 50-55% quite quickly. So they are pretty hard-nosed.
Well, how does that, clearly when it happens, it has a big effect.
Yeah.
But in the longer term, how does it affect? That's going to be the interesting thing, isn't it? Because any organization that goes through that type of change is going to be hard. It doesn't matter whether you're a school or you're a, whatever organization. And I think so, and a lot of these, venture capital guys are quite used to that. They put everyone through the pain with a view to further down the line, it makes it better. The question will be, is that better?
Yeah, that's the fair. And the trouble with education, as we know, is there's no instant result. You're not suddenly making a product, and some of these things are a lifetime. And there's a great affinity here with a lot of alumni to the college. Some of that's hard to put a price on, and so yes, you can drive these things through, and they're very successful. And some brilliant schools out there that are, for profit and do amazing jobs. And I haven't lived, in those sort of organizations, but I think they're just very, very hard nosed. There's obviously centralization of resources, and they're just hard nosed. And I think we still are in this institution stroke business tension, which, probably would be more business minded than institutional minded, with a different group or for not for profit.
And do you think that the academics in the school are becoming more aware that they need to understand that side?
Yeah, they have to be, because we're having, sadly, some different conversations, and that the land of milk and honey that probably existed pre-COVID, just isn't there anymore. And the COVID, hurt us, and we're still recovered from that. But, obviously everyone had to be involved in that. And the reality is we're having to tackle our cost base. And that cost base involves some difficult conversations and some difficult choices. And we have to involve the academic community because they're the users, they're the demanders.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who set the requirement. And we're having to say, you can have either, not both.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've got, look at the parents and you look at the expectation.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at what you're dealing with now, which is more of certainly in my day, you didn't have there wasn't the teachers are always right, everything that goes on is right, and the parents would back the teacher and the head before anyone certainly would talk to you as a child about it. You wouldn't have a say in that. Now that seems to have reversed itself a bit, and it's becoming more of a product.
Yes.
Now of course when it's becoming a product, then you have to spend a lot more time justifying what you're doing,
The value add.
yeah, and
It's attention.
And it's really interesting because I always find it fascinating to see when we talk about the future of things that might happen. And I'm intrigued to know whether what we'll actually do is to get, I was talking to someone the other day and we were just doing a bit of blue sky, what could happen, this idea of almost pay as you use. So for example, if you come to Bradfield and you're not sporty, you're paying for an awful lot that you have no effect for you at all. So, you don't use amazing sports facilities, pitches. You don't use that because you're not sporty. No, you may use the drama or whatever.
Yes.
But I think the interesting thing is that, and funny enough, I was using Radley as an example. And I was saying, well, if you've got these schools around Radley, what you can do is you get people coming to the school for the education. And then the rest is add-ons. So let's say you're very sporty, you can go and use all the facilities at Radley, or you can, if you're drama, you can go use facilities at Radley or whatever. So what you're doing is you're matching up the facilities and only getting one lot, as opposed to every single one having. I mean, St Andrews would be an example. If for example, and I assume you probably do it, they want Latin over there, they can have Latin here because they've got it. So it's a bigger version of that.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, they say that in many ways the market will consolidate. In many ways, it'll totally fragment because you throw in technology as well. You'll have hub and spoke learning potentially, where you're in one day and you're out another day, and you can do this through this, and you can do that. If we do hybrid working, why can't you do hybrid schooling? Now, how do you do sports teams and educate? It's wider than just the classroom, of course it is.
Well, and of course it's also because the parents are probably both working. So you've got that issue too.
Yeah, it's all sorts. But there'll be different schools out there now, colleges out there who are doing fundamentally different ways of education and learning, embracing technology that we're probably still more traditional or conservative, which has many benefits. But there are different ways of doing things. And so, yeah, the market will consolidate, but it would also, I think the pedagogy will just fragment in the way that things are delivered. And I also think you're right about, what parents want to do and what parents can afford will have to be much more a matter of choice. They might want X, but like us all in our own domestic finances, we can't all have what we want. So we have to accommodate accordingly, and maybe they have to go down a certain model. So yeah, I think that the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see more change in the sector than we've seen in the century.
And interestingly, Bradfield hasn't gone the international school route.
We've tried. We have, yeah. And we are trying. For all sorts of reasons, haven't managed to secure a partnership. But we have spent the last decade working with all sorts of partners over time, and it takes two. For various reasons, it hasn't manifested itself, but it's still very much.
Because the alumni often used to throw those partnerships up, didn't they?
Yeah, and they still have actually. We've been very lucky with some alumni giving us contacts, and for various reasons, it hasn't happened. Yeah, no. But it's still very much one of our ambitions.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we've got Campus Exile, which is our VR platform, which is amazing. Immersive learning, and that is an incredible. Of course, I'm part of it, but when you get immersed in what it can do and where it can take you and the things you can learn and see, is incredible. I mean, it's just a different way of learning. And if you're a visual learner, to see it rather than hear about it is just unbelievable, and people learn from it. It's incredible.
Well, I mean, I think the concept of the company is very interesting, but I think the interesting thing is the fact that it's developed.
Yeah, developed here. Direct IT, inspirational.
So how do you create that feeling that you need to do that type of thing? Because, I mean, universities have been doing it, but Oxford University obviously have the Oxford Innovation or whatever, etc. So I think it's really interesting to be able to create that atmosphere that people can do that.
Yeah. I mean, A, he is brilliant as a director of IT, Trevor. And B, he was convincing enough, all of us could see it. I say, I'm not a teacher, we could see it. And he'd go, yeah, this technology is coming. You can see what's happening. And then the way he developed it, and then the things started going in and see what it could do, even before AI, it is unbelievable. There's a point by which, and it's moved on ever since even last month or so, but I went in the various rooms, and you go to various rooms or environments, whatever you can do. And I didn't know it, and you can do things, and it asks you questions, and you can feed back, and you can talk to soldiers in trenches, and you can fly to the space station. When I got back to my virtual room, on the bunk wall on the left-hand side was all the certificates I got from going around, and on the far wall was all the areas for development. And in the corner was my friendly robot that I could design however I like, who's going to help me now speak Greek, or who's now going to help me with my maths, because I didn't quite get maths as well as I thought. And they didn't even know I was learning. Yeah, I knew this was happening. It was unbelievable. And then you throw in AI and you throw in the visual experiences. You can have Barack Obama and Lady Gaga debating world politics, or you can debate with Barack Obama. It's unbelievable. unbelievable if you do, and how it can give confidence to individuals. Now, it's not a delete teaching insert VR. It's complementary, very much complementary.
Well, it's very interesting though, because I think, I mean, the bit that I find fascinating is the fact that the school's thinking about commercialism and as additional income. And we had a conversation a few years ago with a few schools where we actually ran some. Berkhamsted School was one of them. We ran basically a couple of what was called boot camps. We had 2 days. We had a load of came in and just talked about trying to find effectively the use of the soft assets of the school, because historically everyone's just, they look at a school, let's fill the bedrooms for the summer holidays, use football pitches. So all the hard assets, the only thing is about hard assets. They don't think about the soft assets of running a school and stuff like that. And interestingly, what came out of one of the meetings was, this was before COVID. So it was like, what about doing Berkhamsted tutorial? And the bursar at the time was a guy called Peter Nichols, who went to rugby. And that was the unfortunate thing. He went to rugby because actually it was going to be created. And the guy at the time, the headmaster, was interested. But the new bursar that came in just wasn't interested. Didn't want to do it. But what I think is so interesting is actually when you start thinking of yourselves and you think of the soft assets you have in the organization and how that translates out into the world commercially, and monetizing that, that's when I think schools could really transform themselves. And in a way, you've done that with this VR thing, because you've spotted something that is an opportunity. Okay, it came from an individual, but you've had to back that individual. But I think there are, and in fact, you've also done it a bit, my understanding is, with your lettings and events. Because someone said to me, well, the problem you have is that it's not available during the holidays. So I said, yes, but there are other venues that are available there. And it's that thinking, isn't it? It's that, someone wants to book it June and they go, well, you can't come here because so, well, maybe we can get a hotel or,
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, definitely. Again, I'm blessed with the operation team's got here, and that they are various things like that. We got our own, made a decision just before COVID actually to have a digital skills trainer. So he's full-time, 52 weeks a year rather than just term time. And he really gets around the whole organization, giving confidence to domestics, to grounds, to teachers about how to use digital skills. And as an example, we, for housing, you need to register how much you'll be called out or on call of its species. So just through the problem here, he developed an in-house housing app, and it's 2 clicks and it's all done on everyone's phones. And, he's just done that for us now. I still think it's a commercialization opportunity for that, which we need to rethink about. And that's just a sort of, getting into that tech space, thinking that our senior master is, got a lot of focus on AI and how we can embrace AI and so on. There's still a bit of discomfort institutionally, as there is across the sector. I think about, well, what is this big thing and how does it work? But he's still snippets, break it down, think about using this, thinking about using that. And people seeing each other using it and how it works is beginning to build a bit of confidence from that point of view. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think, we are hubs, and we need to think of ourselves as hubs rather than it all, and then to work out and say, I think this is where the fragmentation will happen. We've an FG building down on site at the moment is residential flats. Should that be an innovation hub? Is that somewhere we could have a partnership with a local company that do X, Y, and Z? It's a little software company that's having to pay for renting space, and we say, well, why don't you come here? And then some of the sixth formers we work with them from that perspective. So they're the sort of things.
And that's what quite a lot of the universities have been doing that for a number of years, haven't they? And I think it's a brilliant idea, because what you're doing. And the other thing that's interesting, of course, is that it's also attractive to parents who want to send the children. So if they can see a way into the workplace, and in a strange way, Bradfield seems to have always had a rector. I mean, it has quite a lot of entrepreneurs.
It does. The hybrid crop business have been here.
It's very odd, when I look at quite a lot of my mates, a lot of them are running their own businesses. They don't tend to go to PwC and slaughter and May.
Not all of them went to university either. The number I talked to in that era,
yes,
not all of them went to university, and they just went and they're being amazing. Yeah, I'm very struck by the number of alumni and parents who are very, serial entrepreneurs. And so I think that just, for whatever reason, does become a sort of echo chamber.
And actually bring that back in.
Yes, it does, yeah. So there are things that and this is all about, okay, we've got to deal with the roofs and we've got to deal with the plumbing and all that sort of stuff. But, how do we set ourselves for the future without, what we've got to be slightly careful of is destroying what we got. That you got to keep the home base firm, and what happens here is magic. Is magic, and it's how we build on that rather than
stick to the knitting. But then you have to develop, the future. And I think it's interesting going back to this whole issue of school fees.
Yeah.
You know, if you can't put your prices up, what can you do? And probably this is the first time this sector are in a position where they can't put the prices up. And once you get to that as an organization, then you sort of start to become a bit more innovative about how you do things.
It's absolutely be a brilliant issue. I mean, the whole, Melbourne getting on the front foot with the international and others that are following international, other hybrid learnings. I mean, some of our peers have been very, very entrepreneurial and very commercial because they have recognized that you just can't rely on school fees as your single point of income. It's just not sustainable anymore, especially with bursaries and scholarships and so on. So yeah, you're right. It does create a culture. Needs to be exploited.
Brilliant. Well, it's been really enjoyable talking through.
Let's talk about these things.
No, it's been great. It's been great. And thank you very much for your time.